Okay, joining me right now is jury consultant Alan Tuerkheimer. Alan, the jury came back this morning after deliberating for about 4.5 hours. Now, they were deliberating last night. They came back at 8 a.m. By 8:20, they had reached a verdict. They came back with guilty of manslaughter, guilty of attempted first-degree murder with a firearm. What does this tell you about what was going on with the jury in their minds over the last 24, 48 hours?
It was a pretty harmonious jury. I think there were similar viewpoints in terms of how they saw the case. Now, most juries, criminal juries, are 12. This is only 6. So literature shows, and I've seen, that it doesn't take as much time for 6 jurors to come to a decision as opposed to 12. But I think that they knew what was happening. When they saw that tape, some of them probably made up their minds. And even if they were mostly unified, I'm sure they talked about some of the evidence. They went over the instructions. But to me, it just shows there was not a lot of disagreement and not much dissension within that jury.
But what they wanted to see before they ultimately rendered their verdict last night, they wanted to see what we just heard. They wanted to hear the audio. And they also wanted to hear see Nouman Raja's reenactment, his walkthrough of the crime scene. Again, what can we learn from these requests?
It sounds like they just wanted to cover everything. They wanted to be thorough. They wanted to be comprehensive. And while it doesn't seem like they deliberated for that long period of time, they probably did what a conscientious jury would do and go over everything, go over all angles. And even though they didn't hear directly from him, they were wondering about his version of what took place, because that's a big way for jurors to try to reconstruct what happened when given the evidence that they do see.
Right. And, you know, either which way, it must have been a tough decision for them. Very tough case to hear, very tough case to decide. And we're going to talk more about it. So let's take a quick break on our end. And when we come back, we're going to cover more of the Nouman Raja trial. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. We're still discussing what happened this morning in the Nouman Raja courtroom. The defendant, a former officer, he was found guilty of manslaughter and guilty of attempted first-degree murder in connection with the shooting death of stranded motorist Corey Jones. Huge development in this case, and he will be sentenced on April 26th and could face life in prison. One of the things that the jury wanted to hear, or I should say see, before they rendered their verdict was the walkthrough from Nouman Raja when he was with investigators after the shooting, giving his version of events and what he said ultimately happened. Let's play that for you right now.
And I didn't think there was anybody in there. And as I got close to the vehicle, and the door swung open, and this guy jumps up, and I immediately got out of the van, and he's like, I'm okay, man. And at which point I said, hey man, police, can I help you? And the second I said police, he jumped back, and I clearly remember him drawing and pointing a gun at me. I saw that silver muzzle, and he had, I can swear on this, he had a Laser Max laser in the guide rod in the gun, and I saw that red light of that Laser Max flashing at me, and I immediately just shouted, drop the gun, and sorry.
Let's do this. Take a deep breath. Let's do this. Okay? Do you need a drink?
No.
Okay.
Sure.
Listen, I want you to take your time. I want you to be open. Why don't we
want to walk
go over here?
Can you go over here and show us where you were when this happened?
Absolutely. And
when you got out of the van, which way did you go?
Right here. I came right here.
Hold on one second.
Yep.
Come back here.
Yes, sir.
Come back
yes,
here.
Sir.
Go ahead. Now, when you got out of the van, which way did you go?
In front. This is just like how it is. You know,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
I immediately jumped out and I came right here. And at that point, I didn't have what I had on me. The only thing I had on me, because I was in plain, like my gun was still inside, my duty gun, my vest was inside, and the only thing I had was my backup gun, my department-approved backup gun, in a waistband holster inside with a shirt tucked in like this. And I immediately said, "Hey man, police, can I help you?" And at which point, that's when he jumped back, and I saw him draw the gun right at me right after I said the word police, and it was just like, fuck. And it was just, I kind of got like caught with my pants down at that point. And it just immediately, it's like, positive. It's just like, you know, your family flashed in front of you, your kids flashed in front of you, and you're just like, fuck, and it's just, and just immediately I drew down. I was like, drop the gun, and he didn't. He was right there, and I remember pulling the trigger, I think 2 to 3 times, and he started running, and as he was running, I had my cell phone, and I dialed. And I still remember putting my code in, and just like this, I had the gun, and I'm keeping an eye on this guy. And I put my code in, dialed 911, and I called dispatch right away because my radio was in the van. And the whole time, I'm like giving him commands, I'm yelling, screaming, I'm like, drop the gun, drop the gun, drop the gun. And as he's running, he gets about like right, just a little past where the guardrail starts, and he does this number, and I see his whole body spin, and I saw like a flash, a silver flash, like a metallic flash, come at me, and in my head, I immediately fucking said, aim, aim, and I was like, aim, and I was like, and I just picked that front sight right in the center mass, and I don't have visual, and I started to walk backwards. My game plan, as I was coming from PGA, was this. I thought it was a disabled vehicle, so I was going to pull in front of the van, in front of the SUV, and put my flashers on, walk out, and, you know, see what's going on, and call out the tag, and call a tow truck if I needed to get the vehicle removed. I thought it was a broke down vehicle. There was nobody in it.
Okay. Is there a reason why you stopped here instead of pulling up?
Because the guy jumped out.
He jumped out as
exactly
while you were in the car. He jumped out.
He jumped out, and I immediately jumped out too.
Okay. You were dressed exactly like this.
Exactly.
Nothing more, nothing less.
Exactly like this, and I had my holster, which was covered.
It was covered.
It was covered, wasn't it?
When you have your gun in your waistband, is it obvious that you're carrying a gun? There's no big holes?
I have a big stomach, so it kind of overhangs over the holster.
Were you wearing that same hat?
Exactly, just like this. I believe I'm trying to think. It's like I remember he came out. I said, "Drop." I can't hear you.
Yeah, but hold on.
I'm sorry. I'm thinking. I know when he had the gun pointed at me around the car and everything, I fired. I know that.
Do you remember exactly where he was at when he? And let me go back. You said that you got out, you jumped out, and you came around here. When did the gun come into play, and where did it come from?
See, he jumped out immediately. He said, "I'm okay, man." He said, "I'm okay, I'm okay." And I said, "Hey, man, police, can I help? Can I help you?" And second, I said, I remember.
Don't touch
exactly. I'm not touching anything. No. I remember clearly seeing this. The gun was right here. I remember seeing it above the door level, and it was in this area right here, pointing at directly at me. And I remember seeing it was a silver gun. I could clearly see the hole of the muzzle, and I could see that Laser Max laser in the guide rod flickering. It was like flickers red on and off. And this is where I grabbed my phone and I started running after him with my gun still pointing in his direction, screaming. And I was on 911. I was yelling. I was like, "Drop the gun! Drop the gun! Drop the gun!" And I was screaming at the top of my lungs.
What was he doing at that point?
He was running, and right when he got about, I think it was, because this is where I started to walk. I remember I was around that area by that pole when I decided to walk back to get my radio again, because this guy was like, "Go get your radio, Raj, go get your radio." And
just be careful right here.
I'm sorry. And I remember over here is where I was, and he must have been, do you see this plant right here? This big bush?
Clump?
Yeah, the big clump. Just where the ditch is right there in front of it, kind of like he was in that area, and that's when he did the spin. And I was yelling, I was like, "Drop the gun, drop the gun." And I saw him go like this. And I remember saying to myself, "Aim." I still remember, and I was like, "Aim!" And I put that front sight right in his center mass, and I squeezed. I believe 2 rounds.
Okay.
And I saw him drop, at which point, and when he dropped and everything, and I started going up, and I couldn't see him. And I was like, I lost sight of him. And they're like, "Go get your radio, go get your radio." And I started to go, and I was like, just pedaling back and everything. And the guys came, and I was like, "Look, I lost sight of him."
Well, this video is what the jury wanted to see before they rendered their verdict, and clearly they didn't believe his version of events, and they didn't believe that this was self-defense. Peter, this may have been one of the last things that they looked at, but one of the last times they heard the attorneys was the closing arguments, and it was a very powerful day with those closing arguments. I'm curious your perspective on both how the prosecution and the defense did.
Well, obviously the prosecution got the better of the day. They had the better case, and I thought it was authentic. It was emotional. I don't think that the defense lawyers, as good as they are, could really be as authentic and as effective in their closings. And a lot of lawyers like me and others believe, oh, we're so good, we win it in the closings. I don't think you win it in the closings. I think the only thing the closing does, it gives jurors, and I'll be interested to hear what Alan thinks, who get your point of view to be able to coalesce and say, yeah, that's right. I think the case is won very often in the jury selection. It's won in the openings. It's won, early in the trial. But that's just me talking.
Well, let's get a different perspective. Let's hear from Alan. Alan, what do you think about what Peter said and the importance of the closings, but in relation to the rest of the case?
I agree with him talking. Most jurors make up their minds by the time closing comes around, and then I think he said coalesce. That's a good word to use. But when you close, you really want to tie everything up and empower jurors to take your perspective of the case in with them in the deliberation room. So it's not about changing minds or convincing anybody. Now, you might have some on the fence when closings come around, but there you want to give a succinct closing, and you want to give information to jurors so that they can go to the deliberation room and say, yeah, this is why I side with the prosecution, or this is why I believe the prosecution's witness. So I think he's right. You usually don't win or lose your case in closing, but it's crucial in order to set the stage for deliberations.
Absolutely. And I think we can all agree it was a tough case for them, but they ultimately decided it and they rendered their verdict, and now it's the law of the day. Everybody, Alan Tuerkheimer, Peter Hoffman, thank you both for coming on and providing your perspective today. We really appreciate it. Here on the network, we are going to continue our coverage and recapping everything that happened today in the Nouman Raja trial. We're also going to be previewing the Jason Carter case and talking about the latest developments that are happening across the country right now. So Judge Ashley Wilcott is signing on. I am signing off. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.